This is the Nielsen Norman Group UX podcast. I'm Therese Fessenden. We're in an era where design tools are evolving faster than ever, and it's easy to get swept up in the latest and greatest features or the newest frameworks. But design isn't just about how good we are at using frameworks or using certain tools. It's about understanding people, aligning systems, and designing experiences that hold up under complexity. While service design used to be a competency, primarily focused on the design of physical and interpersonal interactions, this skill is essential and more relevant than ever before. Frankly, it's a skill that every researcher and designer should have, especially as our technical landscape grows more and more complex and demands better orchestration in order to even function properly. In today's episode, I'm sharing a conversation I had with Erika Flowers, the co-author of a fantastic book called Practical Service Blueprinting. Previously, she'd been a principal product and service designer at Intuit, a senior principal design strategist at Mural, and until recently was one of the highest ranking designers in the United States government as the human-centered strategy leader for AI readiness at NASA. There, she worked on digital transformation efforts specifically around AI. Erika's perspective on service design is both refreshing, optimistic, and expansive. We talk about what it means to design at scale, why blueprints are more than just diagrams, and how the role of designers continues to evolve, especially as our tools and expectations shift. I walked away from this conversation with a deeper appreciation for the choreography that goes into every great experience, whether that's for rocket scientists or for another UX designer. With all that said, here's Erika. So Erika, I'm super stoked to have you on the show today. I'm excited to learn more about you and about your experiences. And it's exciting for me to be talking to someone who's authored a book on practical service blueprinting. And not only that, who is doing it in really interesting ways. So before we get into that angle of things, I would love for you to share a bit about your incredible career in service design so far. What was your journey like into design leadership, and how did you end up at NASA?
So the journey into service design follows a really clear chain of events of people who introduced me to information, and I just got obsessed, and then it went from there to there to there to there. And so this all started a long time ago, maybe 2010, with this book called The Persona Life Cycle by Tamara Adlin. And in that book, they had narrative journeys, right? And these weren't service blueprints or whatever. It was more based about how do you take a persona through a journey? But I just remember that concept of being obsessed with it because I'd been doing web design and code, and I was an original 90s web developer, but it gotten so much more into the human side of things by 2010. I wanted to do way more what we would eventually call higher order UX and service design. But I mean, it was still very nascent back then. And so I got that book and I was like, I'm obsessed. And I see the Adaptive Path is holding this conference, Managing Experience Conference in 2013. And I go to a workshop, and the workshop is hosted by two of the greats, Chris Risden and Patrick Quattlebaum from Adaptive Path. And I'm just sitting there, I'm just doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. And the workshop was on service blueprinting. I'd never heard that term before. And I in that workshop, I was like, I don't ever want to do anything again. I'm never designing anything again. I just want to do service blueprints. And I even have the notebook from that conference where I wrote, apparently I forgot grammar, but it just said, what is service blueprint? And so I go back home to Salt Lake City, and later that was in March. Later that year, I go to the first Adaptive Path Service Experience Conference, the very first one. And I see people talk, and I'm blown away, and I can't believe it. And I sit down at lunch, and the person sitting next to me was who would become my hiring manager at Intuit in 2013. So we exchanged information in November. And was on an airplane, and I had moved and accepted a job by February to go work at Intuit as their very first principal service designer for the customer support organization, which even putting design resources in the customer support organization was new to Intuit. And I'm not talking about the customer support touch points of like the website. I'm talking about like agent experience, chat experience, phone, IVR, that type of stuff, the whole flow of an ecosystem that isn't product based. And when I would go read resources, it was very like services oriented. When I'm trying to build a SaaS based software product and trying to learn service design for people who design how you get on an airplane or a train or like all these things, it was like, I didn't know what to do. And that's where I always keep it on my desk. The book came from, which was, I don't know how to apply this to tech. And so everything came from there. And so then I was just in service design, and now it's just evolved into, the orchestration and choreography of human experiences that sometimes involves products and services as touch points, but it really is like being a heuristic planner of events that then people can experience. And we're so far away from the pixel at this point. The last 2 years at NASA, I haven't designed anything. I haven't built anything because we are just constructing experiences and, more important, the topography of the internal organizations in order to deliver the experiences.
Yeah, and I'd love to like learn more about that. Or obviously NASA, I can imagine there are some things you can share and can't share, but what is design like in a high stakes environment like NASA? I mean, you've got rocket launches, you have rocket scientists, you have
you do.
systems all over the place that are incredibly complex. So I would love to learn a bit more. I know you mentioned that it's, we're beyond the pixel, and I love that expression.
Yeah.
So what does get designed? I would love to know more.
It's really, in a large organization, and NASA is, it's large, and it's also subdivided by center and by focus. And so people who launch rockets are different than people who do environment science, or different people who do satellites, or different people who do administration. NASA does a lot of stuff that is, like business oriented, where like they work with small businesses, they work with grants, they work with whatever. So it's not all like rocket science. Some of it is like governmental, some of it is exploratory, some of it is, public facing. And so the work that I've been doing there is really about like connecting dots and connecting people and helping teams of teams like bridge the gaps between information and between like silos. And it's not like silos are bad, but it's, they're all doing different things. They don't like talk to each other. They do, but they don't. It's like they have their own missions. And so you have to take a big, like high altitude, like orbital, satellite view of the organization and say, well, we're trying to accomplish things more holistic. We're trying to accomplish things more in like a unified manner. How do we do that? And that's where myself and some other people were brought in as digital service experts, modeled after the United States digital service, to bring human-centered design and design thinking into the organization to start to apply it to our own internal operations. And so most of the work is about coordinating, connecting dots, helping gather people together, understand their problems, codify it, turn it into a hypothesis, kind of run it through like design thinking 101. Well, like who's your customer or your pseudo customer, or like, what benefit do they need? What are the challenges we're facing? What hypotheses do we have we want to prove or disprove? And then start bringing these teams that have like deep expertise and experience in things that like it's not software design, it's not tech, it's completely different. It's government and aerospace, and run them through the exact same type of stuff that you would learn at like those adaptive path or like, Silicon Valley style conference workshops. And so it's the exact same work. It's the exact same tenets as service design, product design, UX, like whatever we want to call it. But it's being applied almost, in my case, exclusively to the orchestration of relationships and people, and the translation of like ambiguous, complex problems and information into clear, achievable, measurable, complex problems that can then be broken down. And so it really is like running workshops, facilitating and synthesizing like nonstop, because this is where it's like different you're working in like a tech company is that it's not like I'm going to go help like build a rocket. I'm not going to go help launch a satellite. So it's like my job is kind of done because it's like they got their information and then they take it and they do science and rocketry and government administration with it, and then I kind of like step back and go do it there. So it really was like being a full-time like pro facilitator and dot connector.
Mm. Yeah, and I appreciate the expression dot connector too, because ultimately it sounds like a lot of what you're doing is not just helping break down some of these siloed practices, which again, not to say silos are bad, but that silos exist just as a fact, right? There are people who are heads down in their mission, and these people are heads down in their mission. And it's not always natural for these types of communications to just happen. Like it kind of requires almost an intentional, like a designed pause in our work to say, let's talk through things and break our usual pattern of working in these kind of, I use the term tunnel vision or like, tunnel vision sort of way or horse blinder sort of way that we're very, very focused. However, we need to stop that for a moment to kind of take our head out of the water, breathe, and like actually start talking through it all again. So it to me, it's an incredibly valuable part of pretty much any design discipline or design function. When I think about functional areas at, not just in federal organizations, but in many others, but maybe especially federal organizations. Having been public sector myself, I've worked in the U.S. Army Reserve myself and been witness to a lot of the pains of public sector infrastructures, tech and otherwise, and how it can sometimes be really, really difficult to work through some of the bureaucracy of it. And furthermore, like the really outdated technology that sometimes people, as legacy systems that people have to ultimately work within. Yeah. And I do want to recognize too that we also have a very global audience. And, I think while some of this might be US specific, I do think there are connections to broader trends happening on a global scale and maybe even beyond the US government. So I would love to pick your brain a bit about that as well, which is, what are some trends that you're seeing? I mean, for me, I see a lot of fixation on efficiency, automation, reducing budgets. Is that something you're seeing? And are there other things I'm potentially missing? Then, maybe we can, that's a very big question to unpack here, but I would love your thoughts, as far as how design might potentially evolve, given everything that we're seeing.
What I see is a pretty big shift toward, it's kind of the integration of the practice of what we would have called like UX, product design, design thinking, human-centered design over the past 10 or 15 years. And it's kind of soaked in. And I think that the big push of like the early 2010s, maybe even like the 20-aughts, that like elements of user experience, Jesse James Garrett, when the book came out, like blew our minds way back then. It's like that was, 15 years ago. I mean, that was like we've integrated that. I mean, there were kids who were in elementary school who now work with us that, it's like, and so like, I think we succeeded in getting that type of information into like the boardroom, the seats at the table, and like we climbed the ladder. But now like the new problem is that it is so integrated that the design and like the human-centered specialists, it's way more general. And you have that like spread out now through the organizations and through initiatives and through like different forms of like, not middle management, but the people who are like pushing projects forward and kind of how the people who make decisions, which typically aren't like the designers, like we know it's important. We know that there's customer experience. We know that things have to have that sort of like polish. And we know that there has to be journeys. We know that there has to be kind of that attention to the longitudinal experience of like everything touch points stacked up over months or years. And so with the birth of, AI, which, we can't deny it, like it's here, like it only is becoming more and more prevalent. The efficiencies and the automations and those things you talked about, I think is coming back to the dot connecting and being able to manage people and relationships. Because I've seen it, I've been doing it, I see it in the places that are like other businesses, other organizations, where what's important now is like problem solving on a choreography level, because you can like go and get on Chat GPT and vibe code your way to a prototype in like 2 hours, and it works. Like I've done it. Well, that's here to stay. Like we don't even need to talk about like, is AI going to replace some functions of design? Like, yes, it is. So what do we do now? What we do now is the people who call ourselves designers or like human-centered, innovators or facilitators or practitioners have to become the internal dot connectors and orchestrators of the internal decision making and kind of not politics, but advocating for what we sell, be it products or services or whatever, that are going to largely now be much more like human to human interactions, because products are going to get so smart so fast. I mean, I just got messaged about this big agentic AI conference where it's like it can like now do things. And so I think what's much more important is how do we translate our human needs and desires for our customers and the people we serve through all this new technologies, and not worry so much around like who broke the Figma auto layout or whatever, because it's like that doesn't matter. Like by the end of this year, it doesn't matter. I can't wait to go to like config conference and be like, what are they even going to talk about? Because the minutia of having to do the hard work of design, I mean, has a year or less maybe left before it's like, okay, now we've solved all that. Now, how do we take our same skill set and apply it to the internal organizational politics and relationships, the external choreography of what we want our customers to do? How do we even like still understand? Because like an AI, at least right now, can't go and observe somebody in their home. Like at Intuit, the biggest top secret thing that we had, that wasn't top secret, but like our secret weapon was the follow me home. And, listeners, go Google that. The Intuit Follow Me Home was like going on site to people's small businesses, to accountants' offices, going into their homes, riding around in Ubers with people who were going to like file their 1099 through QuickBooks Self-Employed. And like, I've spent all day just with an Uber driver, just observing and just watching and just being like, okay, this is what makes it difficult to be an Uber driver and then go and like file your taxes as a self-employed person and your Schedule C and yada, yada, yada. I mean, I've been in people's homes. It's like AI still can't do that. And also, I'm glad, because that's where you still need like the human lens to understand problems and like true like empathy and understand, and then bring it back and utilize these new tools that we're going to have that are kind of replacing a lot of the old-fashioned work. But the upfront understanding the problem space, understanding how to frame it, understanding how to form the hypothesis, and then go pitch it to the executive you need to convince. Like I haven't heard of an AI convincing an executive yet of like greenlighting a project. So we still have to do that, and we still have to advocate for the human experience. But like the minutia of being the best at CSS, those days are gone. Like gone. Like if you're studying CSS and Flexbox right now, you need to stop, because it doesn't matter. There are so much bigger problems to solve now. How do we do that? And I don't know what that's going to look like, because we've all seen the like examples of people like using AIs to generate wireframes, to generate whatever. And yeah, like they're stealing from other apps and they copy the Apple Weather app. And it's like, okay, yeah, like we got to get around that. But that's all going to be solved. That's all going to be solved quickly. And then you'll be able to just go to like your Figma microphone and say, yeah, give me an app that's like Airbnb for turtles. And it will do it. And then like, how do you actually make that into like a product that works? And how do you actually get people to use it? And how do you actually know that you're solving a problem? That's where it goes. So designers are going to have to become like therapists, and basically at this point.
Yeah, actually, I think that perspective is a helpful one, and I think a pragmatic one. So many things popped into my mind as you were just sharing all this. There's the design, the fundamental skills around it versus the tools, which at least at Energy, we've always been very tool agnostic, because frankly, I mean, Energy was around since 98, and like tools have obviously changed a lot since 98. So yeah, great question. Like what happens when the tools and like the fundamental coding skills and aligning things visually, like there are going to be so many automations that will kind of render that almost redundant. I'm going to say almost redundant because I think there's still going to be a need for taste and like understanding when things are off and how to like articulate and like say, this is kind of the thing we need. But like you're saying, these tools are going to get so smart that we'll be able to articulate things in a different way. And that said, though, like you're saying, there's a bit of design as therapy, or like listening and being able to translate this back to people, compare it with what people ultimately need, people as in our target audience, right? And I also appreciate what you were saying too about, understanding the long-term view of the customer experience, but even just the thought of who our customer is, right? Knowing, and like to your experiences, your customers at NASA, I'm going to say customers in quotes, like customers weren't always a customer, right? Like it wasn't someone like in a B2C context who's paying. It's like sometimes they were employees, sometimes they were people like astronauts. Like there could be so many different ideas of customer that I think even now just the term experience design is kind of becoming the more blanket term to respect and reflect on the fact that, hey, we have experiences we're designing for lots of different parties, and there's still going to be a need to study that and understand it. And when you mentioned, AI will likely not anytime soon be the one to survey and observe people, I think it's also interesting to note that like we have algorithms now, surveillance algorithms, and what we're seeing time and time again is that they're actually not as great as we would hope they would be. And there's a lot of bias, and there's a lot of really poor judgment calls that ultimately need to be reviewed and overridden by, a human being who has sense. And like, so, it certainly feels like using it as an input for something like strategic decision making is super risky. And that's where we as designers have a really strategic role to play. So I can imagine that our role as designers, and I'm using that kind of generally because I kind of lump researchers and strategists in under this kind of generalist designer umbrella. But I do think designers are going to have to go into this more generalist direction anyway in order to survive what I think is going to be a really significant change. So I totally agree with you there.
Yeah, I think of it like I know that we're not in Star Trek, but we're like closer to where like I like Star Trek: The Next Generation, right? But all the shows had the same thing where you like talk to the computer and it talks back. And I think that's a lot closer to what it's going to look like. It's not like AI is going to take over and we are all just like in like matrix pods where we just like, have IVs hooked up to us and we never like emerge. Like I still think that humanity is going to, I hope, continue on. So how do we make it so that when we are designing, we're designing things, I don't think we're going to be designing software, but what I think we're going to be doing is designing for potential interactions that are much more humanistic and much more organic and natural. So like when, Geordi and Commander Riker go into the holodeck and start to give it commands of what they want to see, they're like, oh yeah, give me, a speedboat. No, like a red speedboat. Yeah, now give me some water skis because we want a water ski here in the holodeck. And like, can you make it sunny? No, actually make it sundown. I want whatever. Like you're just talking. You're just like vibe coding your holodeck experience here on the Starship Enterprise. Well, that's kind of, I think, what designers are going to be meant to do. It's like, can you articulate the narrative of what you need to have happen to your customer? Can you create that story up front and then use whatever tools are necessary to do that, be it the holodeck on the Enterprise or ChatGPT or Figma and Sketch or Fireworks or Illustrator or Photoshop or like whatever. Like that's all like tool. That's all the same. It's like that doesn't really change the fact that we want people to experience something that currently they don't experience. We have a set of tools, and then we have them experiencing this new thing that we created. And when we were doing this, 15 years ago, it was like websites, and it was, then it was mobile apps. And now it's things that might just exist as conversations, because at this point, we're almost to that point where verbalization of want and need, and then verbalization of need fulfillment is kind of where we're going. I mean, I love pulling up ChatGPT and going into voice mode and just doing the conversation back and forth and figuring stuff out because we're getting now closer back to how humans communicate, which is through story and anecdote and metaphor. If we can tap into making technology behave and pass that Turing test and have it react to us like people do, now that's what we're designing for. And so I think that's where, if people want to get into like the future of career, it will be thinking like a choreographer, thinking like a therapist, thinking like maybe a lawyer, or like people who represent people and have to use words and language to get their point across. And that's, I think, I'm thinking of this right now, so we can coin this phrase together. Words and language is going to be the top design skill of the future. And then the other hard skills come next. Because words and language is the only way you're going to be able to facilitate and work with the other humans you work with. And you're going to be designing things that rely on words and language for its input and output. And then the in-between, that's going to continue to evolve. It doesn't matter. 10 years from now, we'll be on this podcast talking about something else we can't even think of, because the AI singularity will have given us technologies we can't even imagine. But we will still be humans, and our brains have not evolved in tens of thousands of years. And so we still are stuck with the wetware that we have. And no matter what we build, it still has to go through your ear canal, through your eyes, out your mouth. And that's like the final interface design is, can you get into someone else's mind?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, Erika Hall, who's the author of Conversational Design, like she opens up her book saying, conversation isn't a new interface. It's the oldest interface. Yep. It's the way that we've communicated with each other. And not only that, how we communicate with technology now as well.
And I want to point something out that always blows people's minds. Language is an invention. It's not a naturally occurring thing. It is an invention. Mm-hmm. And so language is like our number one. It's bigger than the wheel, bigger than fire. Language is what has allowed us to evolve. And collaboration and working with other people. And they say like the first sign of civilization is finding a skeleton who had a femur, the big bone in your thigh, a fracture and then set and then healed. They said that's the first sign of human civilization, because before, if you would have broke your leg like that, you'd just be left to die. But if you break your leg like that and someone else in your tribe takes care of you and feeds you and brings you water and protects you and lets that bone re-heal, it's that collaboration with other people that is the first sign that humans understood the need for others. And we're still there. We're there more than ever now. And so like anthropology is also something else I think we need to like lean more into, as designers, because we're kind of reaching like a new age of like de-technification, because all that's going to be handled. What's going to be important is, do we know how to work with other people and stop relying on software to do that work for us?
Mm. Yeah. And again, thinking of software, instead of software being the destination, it's again merely a tool. And even with agentic experiences, those are going to be by and large tools. And so actually this kind of like sparks another question, which is about what is service blueprint. Well, obviously we know we've done a previous episode on what service blueprints are, but more so, what is the role maybe that you might see of service blueprints? And now we have, agentic experiences. In my mind, it seems like the complexity isn't going to get easier. Like if anything, it's just going to get more complex, because now we have intermediaries to consider. But what are your thoughts on service blueprints? Like, do you think they're still going to be relevant? Will they evolve? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, totally relevant. I mean, it's going to become it, or whatever the format is called, or however we do it. It's going to become like, I think, the primary artifact, because it's going to become how the choreography is either identified of an existing experience or created for a net new experience. The blueprint is this is what happens. And so like the service blueprint, to me, has always been closer to like all of the work you would go into like make a movie, like the script, the VFX previs, the budgetary, like, do you have the money? Are the producers going to pay? Like, how much do you have? Do you have to use a green screen? You can go on location. And it's not the filming of the movie. It's the planning it out and like documenting it of the movie. That service blueprint or whatever this type of like map is, it's not just the customer's experience. It's also the internal, producers of the experience, and all the systems and policies and things that you need to be able to like make it happen that maybe people never even see or know about. But it still requires organization design, and it still requires support, and it still requires thinking longitudinally over time. And so what you're mapping out isn't really like the software experience, and isn't really just the customer's experience. It is the combined experience of everything, so that you can plan in advance how you want these really complicated, complex experiences to happen, and plan for it, and make sure that the people who show up to go through it do what they're supposed to do to succeed. And if we're talking about AI-backed stuff, conversational-backed stuff, agentic-backed stuff, you're going to have to think through it like you are scripting a movie, only you don't get to control what the actors say. And everything just becomes one big choose your own adventure. And how many contingencies can you think of? How many guardrails can you think of? Because the world is going to become a fluid conversation. We shouldn't be thinking about designing software. We should only be thinking about designing malleable, unpredictable human experiences, because when somebody asks your smart agentic AI, whatever, to do something you weren't prepared for, what are you going to do? And so it has to now, instead of like guardrailing things and having really, I don't want to say rigid, but like predetermined interaction design, now it has to be a dance. It has to be choreography, because we are going to empower our customers and people with the ability to kind of ask for whatever they want. And then we have to be ready to receive those questions and commands and prompts, and then somehow give them back an experience. And right now, I mean, we can see so many failures of how jamming LLMs and AIs into every product like isn't really producing value. It's like we're all a part of this giant global beta test of like what happens when the machine can talk back almost like human-like. What do people ask for? I think that's all going to be kind of smoothed out and solved in the next few years. And then we have to decide what happens where, for instance, like I'm a QuickBooks customer still. I have like a little tiny small business, so I have to like log in. It's like tax time. I log into QuickBooks, and it's like, I do it once a year. There's like all this AI stuff there, and I'm just like, I don't know what to do. Like I have my transactions and I have my whatever, and it's like, how do you want to auto categorize? And the AI thing is here, and it's like it's the weird chimeric blend of like old style software, which really hasn't evolved since the 70s, and now this stuff that's kind of like magical. And it makes me wonder, like, why do I need the rest of this bookkeeping app at all? Why isn't it just like a big smiley face? It's like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I don't know, get this to my accountant. And it goes, okay, we'll take care of it. And I did work on that a little bit in 2019 with QuickBooks Live, which was using real human bookkeepers that would like appear in your software. And they were working from home as like gig economy 1099, workers, and they would get assigned and they'd show up and they'd be on camera and they'd work through stuff and they'd do it for you while you slept. Well, now it's like, that was 6-7 years ago. Now an AI will be able to do all that. But then it's like, why do I even need the rest of the software? Why don't I need anything? Why doesn't it just send me a text? Your taxes are done and some supercomputer did it for you. And so it's like, is everything just going to become text notifications or gives me a call? Like, you know what I mean? It's like software it's just changing so much. Sticking to the idea that we need to continue to just make things like more skeuomorphic or less skeuomorphic. It's like nothing has changed. It's all still 1970s, 1980s, like GUIs and tables and rows. And it's like, I don't think that has much time left. I think we are going to enter an era. I can't predict or say what it's going to look like, but it's not just going to be a repeat of what was built at like Xerox PARC when they came up with the interface, or like when we saw like the mother of all demos and like the first, moving a mouse around on a screen between two locations. Like that was 20th century tech, 21st century tech. I don't know what it's going to be, but I simply think we are done with the classic idea that designers sit and align boxes and arrows. And I'm so sorry to the Boxes and Arrows blog. I just think that is, there's just something else. I don't know what it is, but I think it's going to have to be about choreography and anthropology and knowing how to tell a really good story and then hope that the people you want to be the primary actors in your story do what they're supposed to do.
Yeah. I appreciate the term chimeric blend because in some ways I feel like that's kind of where, like you're saying, our technology is going to move, and whether or not we're going to latch on to, the 70s GUIs for much longer, we might
Yeah.
a little bit just by virtue of our, hesitance to change. But I do think, like you're saying, it's going to be complex. It's going to require orchestration, and thinking of our work as a dance, I think, is such a poetic way to put it. So, Erika, it has been so fun. I could talk to you for probably another hour. But with that said, I would love to ask you one last question, which is, what excites you most about the future of design work?
I mean, for me, what I want to be able to do personally, and I think what is just exciting in general, is getting to move away from like being the best at operating a computer to doing things that involve solving complex human issues out in the wild, and where we're going to be doing things, I think, that aren't so much about, there's still going to be need for like code and design and all the things that are like kind of well established. But I think there's such a bigger space and opportunity now to start to think about how can we go out and do things with people in like healthcare. We have all this new technology. It's like, how do we take it and leverage it and make the experience to drive down costs and make things so more accessible to people who do want to like diagnose, with an AI. And there's been tons of cases where things have been like narrowed down or properly diagnosed, like by talking to, an LLM, and it's able to look at so much information and bring it back so quickly. And so trying to figure out like, what do we really need to do as people to like help other people, and how can we leverage this? Probably what will be literal world changing, like Gutenberg level, like step change in like human technology. The printing press, was like this huge AI and LLMs and everything that's going to come after that, I think is going to end up being something like that. So how do we make the world better using this kind of magical secret power? And so like where we think about, we want to build robots that can go and mine on asteroids and they never get tired and they never need food and they never, it's like, okay, yeah, that's like one thing we could do to like keep the capitalism going. But what if we could also do things that like help the people here on Earth? And we start to develop solutions that, again, bring us way more back to like tribal care and support and collaboration, and like helping people on that anthropological like level using technology, and getting way more back to filling the gaps that technology has not been able to fill. And we need to start applying things humanistically and applying technology to like close the gap. Because if we ever want to reach like a post-scarcity society, we're going to have to hope that some of this technology enables us to like raise, that bottom end of like social support and leverage things for people. So that's what excites me. I want to work in spaces that are helping people in pain, that are helping people who are like underprivileged, that are helping people who need access to the type of freedom of movement or freedom of information that this technology can allow, to the point that we bring some like equity back, to the common person. And I think design, I guess this will be my final thought of, designers who listen to this. I think that we are going to be part of the population that recenters what we do, especially in like technology and like whatever we call this industry we work in, helping people survive, helping people, endure, and leveraging things not just to continue to feed the coffers, but actually like help people, because we need a lot of help right now and there aren't enough people. And so how do we leverage these new technologies? How do we leverage AI to actually do some good? And that's kind of like, the Promethean myth of fire. Fire destroys, but fire creates, we're pyrobiological people. Like our brains didn't like start to evolve until we learned to cook food and denature proteins over fire. And then we started to eat that. We started to evolve again. It's hundreds of thousands of years ago. That's something else we studied at Mural, by the way, is the metaphor of the campfire and how cooking food actually helped humans' brains evolved by denaturing, protein of like animal meat. We're at that stage again. So it's weird. It's like 2025, and yet we are now having to recapitulate how humans evolved socially prehistorically. And I'm excited for that because everyone's lonely. Everyone is struggling, and we need people and each other more than ever. I'm in so many Signal groups over the last few months of people I've never met just talking nonstop. And it's like, where was all this a year ago? It's like we didn't need it. And now there's probably 50 people I could get on a Zoom with or a chat with or whatever, just surviving, just being there to talk and just staying connected. So that's what excites me, is using this to like keep the connection of people who want to help going.
Yeah. I think that's such a great way to end the episode. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, look for the helpers and be the helpers.
Yeah.
I think that's a really exciting place to be. Well, Erika, thank you so much for your time today. If people want to learn more about you and the work that you do, where could you point people to?
Well, I pretty much only live on LinkedIn now, so go look me up there. My website where you can find my info is helloerikaflowers.com, Erika. Everyone spells my name wrong. And
I can relate.
yeah, I know. But go send me an invite. As long as you're not like a bot or somebody who looks like mean and scary, I accept all LinkedIn requests and chat and do whatever. Like, let's see if we can get me to 50,000 followers. I'm trying to catch up to Hong, and he's got like 40,000 followers, and I'm just like, how do you get so many followers? So,
oh my gosh, he has so many. Yeah.
We'll do a before and after this podcast to see how many followers I get.
I certainly hope it helps. And side note for those listening, Hong Zhu is our mutual connection, mutual friend, who is mind-boggling in the work he does. I'm hoping to have him on an episode soon.
And he's amazing, and he's who connected me to this podcast.
Yes,
and so I do have to give a shout out to Hong. He's the best.
Yeah, thanks, Hong, and thank you, Erika, for being here. It has been so fun.
Super fun. It was great. I came up with like 3 different phrases I'll have to go coin and write a blog post about now. Hopefully I remember them. I forgot what I said. I'll have to get the transcript.
Oh, we'll send it your way. Well, anyway, Erika, thanks so much, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.
That was Erika Flowers. She is now the principal service designer at the Insulet Corporation, where her latest design challenge has been focusing on helping people with diabetes live uninhibited lives. You can learn more about her work by visiting her website at helloerikaflowers.com. That's Erika with a K. And you can also follow her on LinkedIn. You can find links to all of those in the show notes. And don't forget, NNG has thousands of free-to-access articles, videos, and upcoming courses on things like service blueprinting, design facilitation, and how you can future-proof your UX practice. If any of those sound interesting to you, go to our website, www.nngroup.com. That's nngroup.com. Finally, if you like this show and want to support our work, please leave a rating and hit follow or subscribe on the podcast platform of your choice. This show was hosted by me, Therese Fessenden, and produced by me and Chrissy Richardson. That's it for today's show. Until next time, remember, keep it simple.